Welcome to the Naavik Gaming Podcast, where it is our mission to explore the business and future of video games. We bring together the industry's brightest builders, investors, and thinkers to keep a pulse on current events, dissect emerging trends in games, share lessons learned, and have a great time. This podcast is also part of Naavik's growing ecosystem, which ranges from free and premium research to consulting and advisory services. For more information, visit www.naavik.co. This episode is brought to you by Dive. Most game studios have data, they just can't use it. Reports are slow, systems are fragmented, and the insights that should drive revenue stay buried. Dive changes that. Dive is a fully managed analytics and live ops platform built for game studios. No data team required. An impressive 95% of their clients grow revenue in year one. You can learn more at dive.games/scale or simply check out the link in the show notes. And with that, let's jump into the episode.
Welcome to the Naavik Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Kalie Moore. Today's episode sits at one of the most interesting crossroads in entertainment right now, the collision of true crime, interactive storytelling, and AI. And if you've tuned into my last episode with Julia, the CEO of Dorian, you know, like the rest of the world, am obsessed by microdramas. Microdramas are on track to be a $26 billion category outside of China by 2030. And true crime remains one of the most durable content genres in entertainment. And playable content is finally getting native distribution on platforms like Netflix and YouTube. Sitting at the intersection of all three of these topics is Scriptic. Scriptic is a London-based BAFTA-nominated studio building what they call narrative play, phone-first, live-action, interactive dramas where you investigate crimes through the victim's phone. Their breakout title, Scriptic Crime Stories, became one of the top-performing games in the history of Netflix games, with over 7 million downloads, more than 100 million TikTok views, and a top 10 ranking on Netflix games. They've raised over $9 million, with A16Z recently naming them as one of the few studios shaping the future of interactive storytelling in the AI era. But what makes Scriptic unusual is what they've done since that breakout game. Since 2025, Scriptic has focused on prestige, cross-platform narrative games targeting streaming platforms, console, and PC, all while retaining their mobile expertise. Their 2025 release, Urgent Cases, launched on YouTube Playables with a single build that dynamically scales from a phone inside the YouTube app all the way to full desktop browser. Most studios pick a platform and optimize for it, but Scriptic is doing the opposite. They're betting on a future of narrative play living across every screen at once. My guest today is James Nicholls, who's the studio director at Scriptic. James has 25 years at studios from Codemasters to King and Natural Motion, and he now runs the day-to-day operations and product strategy at Scriptic. Today, we're going to talk about what it actually takes to build an interactive drama for a mass market audience, why true crime is the genre that cracked this all open, what the YouTube Playables Bet says about the future of distribution, and how Scriptic is using AI across the production stack, but without losing what makes their stories feel very human. James, welcome to the podcast.
Lovely to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, let's dive in because I have a lot of questions for you today. So through your career, you've worked across mobile, PC, console, handheld, and now streaming and web. What made Scriptic the next move after 25 years across the companies that I mentioned? What did you see here that you weren't seeing anywhere else?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it was really the type of game and playable drama that Scriptic were making was really exciting. I think the thing that I've kind of grown towards during my career is I want to make games that reach huge audiences. I don't want to kind of make sort of niche things that only hit to a certain audience. And what the Scriptic are trying to do is make playable dramas that like literally anyone can play, really. So that will start to kind of hint at why going to any platform possible makes sense as well. But yeah, I spoke with Ben and Hull, the co-founders at the beginning, was just really blown away with what they were trying to do and how they were trying to build these stories that like anyone could pick up and play if they knew how to use smartphone, basically. And yeah, it just really appealed the idea of being able to kind of shape, how we work, but also the creative, and having a little bit of a say across everything, really, and getting us to try and sort of develop this new type of medium that we're building and sort of bring it to as many people as possible.
See, Scriptic describes itself as sitting at the cross point between games and shows. And for people hearing about the studio for the first time, can you walk me through what narrative play actually means? And like, where does this sit relative to a traditional mobile game, a Netflix limited series, or a micro drama platform? How does this all fit together?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's sort of really central to what we do. So we we kind of want our stories to be the thing, right? Everything starts with a really, really fantastic narrative. That's the through line for everything, and then we want everybody, who would be interested in that narrative, to be able to engage with it and feel like they're shaping it. So the idea is that you as a player, you feel like you've ended up inside your own kind of HBO miniseries or your own HBO drama or something like that. That's the feeling we want to create. So it's not about kind of hardcore RPG, branching, stats, and that kind of thing. It should be really, really kind of light and easy to just go in and shape what's doing. And then the things you're interacting with are the things you'd expect to be doing. But it just changes from if you're watching a TV show and you're kind of a spectator looking in, it draws you into that feeling of you're actually inside the drama, and you're getting just enough ability to kind of shape the outcomes of that to feel that you're actually involved with it. But it's not like one of these things where our players they're almost kind of gaming the system. They're always trying to like microanalyze what will this choice mean in terms of what score I'll get or what unlock I will receive if I go down this route. So we want to keep players in that place basically where they're just going with the flow. They're just playing the story. They're just experiencing it. But there's enough cause and effect in there that it actually reflects your choices. It's not just a passive thing that's just bubbling along. You actually see the impact of what you did reflected in the narrative. It's really, really subtle. It's something that we spend ages discussing and debating. We tailor it slightly depending on which platform it is. So if it was kind of, an absolutely mass market platform, it would be very, very light. If we're pushing something towards PC, it will be slightly more challenging, but still in that same space of basically the narrative comes first, and we're trying to get players to feel like they're just inside the narrative and shaping it as they go.
Can you tell me a little bit about the demographics of the type of people who play your games?
Yeah, so we've done really well to hit what, would kind of line up really well with like a true crime audience. So certainly for mobile, it's been skewed female, and it's been kind of like gamers in the kind of like sort of around the sort of middle of the bell curve would be around the sort of 35-ish. So it's much more close to like a casual games audience that we've hit in the past. Obviously that changes sometimes if we hit different platforms, but I think our strength is we're very good at targeting players that maybe don't consider themselves traditional gamers, but we can create something which they feel is okay, cool, yeah, that's something I'd want to play and get involved with. And so that's where we've lined up. And certainly for the stuff we did on mobile, it was kind of female skewed, and it was kind of some mid-30s kind of skew. So really interesting demographic to be able to get to.
Yeah, it's funny. I in a couple of my last episodes, both with the Dorian founder and Fusebox Games, they also target their audience maybe skews slightly younger, but they also target this audience. And to me, it's always so interesting. I'm in the women 35 age group, and every single woman I know plays a mobile game on her phone, at least one. They're really excited about it, and not one woman I know would consider herself a gamer, which is so wild. So it's such a huge demographic of people who are not just playing games, but like actually spending a lot of money in games, but don't think of themselves as gamers. Super interesting.
Definitely. And I've been kind of in games long enough. For me, that's really exciting. I can remember kind of how excited people got when games like SingStar on the PlayStation started to kind of nudge out beyond the kind of core gaming demographic, and other people started playing games. And the work I did at King was like this, being able to work on games like kind of Candy Crush and Farm Heroes and stuff like that, where you actually saw regular people playing the game. They wouldn't consider themselves gamers, but they get huge value and enjoyment out of these experiences. And yeah, that's what really excites me, really, the idea that games has got to that point where it can be for everybody, that the things that make a game work brilliantly are pretty universal, and then it's about finding the right style of that, the right application of that for the audience. But yeah, the most exciting thing for me is seeing like big numbers of players playing games, and people that maybe don't traditionally consider themselves gamers getting value from what you've made. That's the best bit of games making for me.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to move on a little bit. So your CEO, and I know things have changed slightly since this comment. So your CEO said, I want to say a couple years ago, that the goal was to become the Roblox of narrative, which is a really big ambition. How do you translate that vision to day-to-day product? And also, how has that changed since you've expanded to different platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So the focus for the mobile platform we built out was very much pushing in that direction. So what we were trying to build for our mobile platform was a free-to-play platform with lots and lots and lots of small stories on it, and we were building towards getting kind of user-generated content on there as well. And that's where that kind of framing comes from. So the idea being that you could both consume premium stuff that we'd made, but also kind of play things that other people that were fans of that audience had made as well. It's a really, really ambitious goal. Since early 2025, we've been focused on kind of more of like prestige kind of narrative. So we're going for more of like a premium quality narrative, and we're targeting, say, streaming platforms, PC, console, mobile, kind of, and very kind of like, single bespoke stories really done to a higher standard. I think we feel that's like, where our strength is, and we're kind of pushing in that direction now. And yeah, you're starting to see some of those pieces start to come through now. There's little kind of tidbits of some of the things we're working on. We've put like YouTube Playables game live to start to explore what your sort of streaming first games might mean for us and how that would work. And we're really accelerating now in that direction.
Right. I will get a little bit more into the platform breakdown and where you're thinking. But first, I want to talk about true crime as a through line. So I am a true crime fan. I've been listening to My Favorite Murder podcast since it launched 10 years ago. And as you know, I don't know if all the other viewers are Navic, but true crime is one of the most durable content categories in modern media, from the podcast that I listen to Netflix documentary to TikTok deep dives. Why does this genre work so well for interactive drama? And what does this interactivity unlock that a documentary can't?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we spent a really long time studying this, and sort of we did a lot of kind of interviews and surveys, people that were into true crime as well, and really trying to understand it. I think there's probably two bits to it. There's probably the true crime itself and why that's kind of durable and exciting, and then why does it work for games? I think true crime as a genre has got that really kind of interesting, accessible kind of idea about it, right? There's a fairly good and a bad framing. Normally you're trying to find out what, somebody did that was really bad and how that happened and, what the outcome was. There's a very human connection with the story and understanding what happened there and trying to get to the bottom of a mystery. I think for games, that then sets you up really nicely as a player. You're in a position of, say, being a police detective. You're on the side of good. You're trying to solve the case. You're trying to solve a puzzle and bring that together. So it really sets us up really nicely for games as well. I think there's flavors of true crime, obviously, as well, that you can go really, really serious, very kind of artistic end of the spectrum. It can be very kind of pulpy and very casual as well. There's quite a lot of space to play in there. And then what's interesting, we did play around with some other genres as well early on in our kind of free-to-play platform. We looked at kind of some horror things. We looked at some romance novels and that kind of thing. But true crime, it made the best stories for us. The things we could tell, we were really kind of excited about telling that type of story, and we felt we did that really well. And it just seemed to have that kind of level of hook and engagement with players that others didn't quite capture. And for us, it was just the sweet spot of all the things we did. And then obviously the type of game we've then made, we've created gameplay where you're kind of put in a position of maybe reviewing evidence. So maybe you're getting to look at somebody's phone and like what happened to them before a crime got committed or after a crime was committed to them. And you're getting to go through basically evidence that's on there. So it's like this really perfect fit for kind of, it's basically like digital forensics that you're doing in the game, and it fits the platform's absolutely perfect as well. So there's a few things kind of lining up there that make true crime and games and narrative work really well. But for us, it's being the sweet spot, and it's the area that we're really pushing into now. It's true crime, and then trying to bring it to as many screens as we can.
And I know I mentioned this in the intro, but Scriptic crime stories became one of the top performing titles in Netflix games history. 7 million downloads, top 10 game, 100 million TikTok views. That kind of breakout on a single platform is, what a lot of studios spend a decade chasing. From the inside, what I'd love to hear more about the formula and what drove it. I'm pretty sure it's a mix of the IP, the format, the platform fit, and of course, the moment. I feel like we have reached maybe peak true crime. Maybe it's coming. And I also want to know about how much the success on Netflix games shapes the confidence that that format could travel to different platforms.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think for Netflix games, there was an element of timing where we joined Netflix games and we just really went for that platform and really created an original experience for Netflix games. So there was quite a few games when Netflix were on that kind of style of gaming and platform, where they were licensed games, they were moved over to Netflix games from another platform or something like that. So they weren't kind of necessarily, completely made for that. And yet we've made this experience, I mean, building on what we've just been talking about, the audience and, the kind of lineup of that audience. I mean, if you've got a bunch of Netflix subscribers getting, messages that these games are available and so on, it's a really great audience lineup there. So I think if you're going to get a kind of proof of the thesis of what Netflix were pushing at the time, that people in our subscriber base will want to leap over and play games, that was a pretty good fit, I think, at the time, and probably backed up by the numbers there. And then the type of thing we made wasn't just, kind of a throwaway experience. These were really, really high quality stories. They were really resonant. They were really kind of sort of capturing zeitgeist feeling at that moment of time of what those stories were about. And that maybe people would give it a try, but they're not going to play all the way to the end and then play the second episode and that sort of thing, unless they're really actually enjoying it. So we obviously connected really well there. And obviously for Scriptic, that allowed us to hone our craft, to try things out that worked and didn't work, to learn about tutorials and pacing and what kind of branching works, and even some of the technical stuff behind the scenes of how to build these kind of stories. And then we had the opportunity then to start to experiment with, out on a free-to-play platform, try loads of different things and push things really far and try advertising our games. I think the TikTok story is incredibly interesting in terms of like what things cut through. I mean, the huge numbers that we were able to do were very much sort of specific stories, and things like our Dispatches series that we had on the free-to-play platform, for example. They put you in a position where you are kind of like you're responding in the moment to something that's happening. So you're literally put on the spot. You are having to make a call of like what to do with somebody who's on the line and making a call, and putting those into TikTok videos went really, really viral. Really huge numbers, tens of millions of some of the individual videos, because they created a scenario where someone was like, "Oh my goodness, this is." Really interesting, or could this be real? Is this really happening? And people talking about this online. And it's obviously it kind of shows that premise, that style of game is really like instantly appeals to people. It's something that people understand, has an emotional reaction for them. Immediately they want to, engage with that thing. And then we're obviously doing that kind of thing in our game. So we're putting you in the position of being, a police detective, or we're putting you in the position of being an emergency responder or something like that. You are, instantly as a player going, right, cool, I know what I need to do here. Like I've seen this in a drama, I've seen these shows before, I know kind of the template here, so I know what's expected of me as a player. I don't need to kind of spend half an hour learning the controls, understanding the scoring system, and you're straight away in that experience. You know what you need to do, and you can kind of be as a player ready to just make a gut instinct reaction to what's on the screen, because you kind of know the setup, what's expected, and you get on with enjoying it. So I think those early signs show how powerful this kind of combination of sort of interactive drama with the kind of true crime and kind of that kind of space can be, and like how quickly it can connect with people, and then how well it can extend out to audience. When it finds that kind of like lineup of audience and gameplay, it can really explode out. So yeah, we've been on that ever since, and we still hold all of those ideas true. Those are the types of game we're now building, but we are targeting. We got really kind of excited looking at where streaming seems to be going. I mean, if you think from our perspective of, we want to get people that maybe don't consider themselves gamers to be playing these games. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon pushing really, really hard into kind of the streaming space. trying to get, games basically playable on TVs, on smart TVs, like directly where people are kind of, consuming their dramas in the living room and that sort of thing. And again, it's that it looks like an emerging opportunity where maybe there's this audience is out there of, people that wouldn't consider themselves gamers but would want to play this type of thing. So that's what excites us. We've been pushing really hard towards that, trying to learn how to do this on big screens and so on. But that's how it's kind of evolved all the way through. So the same proof points from the beginning, but starting to expand out to different platforms and different screens now.
Can I ask you a little bit more about your TikTok strategy? I'm curious of how much of it was planned. I'm assuming you worked, or maybe you didn't, worked with different types of content creators versus how much of it just went viral from a UGC perspective, just because there were so many people, one, playing your game, really liked it. The content, like you said, is kind of a natural format for TikTok, and true crime on TikTok is such a big genre or niche. Like, what did that balance look like?
Yeah, it was very, the videos we created were created in-house. We didn't use an agency. They're literally, representations of content we've made. And it was, a period of us experimenting with how to, tell people about our games, get people interested in our games and so on. And honestly, it's like genuine kind of, viral success. It wasn't like we need to get, 10 million people to view our TikTok this month. It was like, what works? Let's try loads of things. And there were examples of things that didn't connect and people were less excited about. But, certain topics and certain types of premise just engaged people and got them, really, really interested. And yeah, there's something about, I think, these kind of fairly realistic scenarios where people will maybe share it, they'll comment on it, they'll react to it, and there's certain types of, like certainly the Dispatcher series that we did that really just blew up, like absolutely unbelievable numbers in terms of, how much people engage with them. So yeah, I think it just, it shows that we've got like a kind of good gut instinct for what type of stories we should be telling and what kind of premises we should be setting up, and to be able to basically represent those same scenarios in a social media post and get people to actually go, oh, that's really cool, look at this, look at what's going on, and then come and view the game and sort of carry out those exact same kind of scenarios in gameplay form is really, really cool. That's what we've been trying to build out ever since.
Yeah, I was going to say next is, I think you have a really good gut instinct on the core loop that works as well. So your phone first format, which is investigating through someone's like text, voice notes, surveillance, it's now associated with Scriptic. How did you land on that core loop specifically? And like, where do you think it could go from here where maybe it hasn't gone yet?
Yeah, well, I think our founders, Ben and Hull, have wanted to make these types of games like since the very, very start of even thinking what Scripted could be. Like, sort of sketching out and planning ideas and trying to build prototypes in their kitchen, like before this company even got going. They've had this really clear view of wanting to make that type of interactive show, and sort of definitely for true crime focused right from the get-go. So it's a bit, that idea has been there from the beginning, and I think what they both bring to the party, which is unique, is they haven't come from a traditional gaming background. They've come in with stories that they want to tell, so they haven't approached it perhaps like gamers would approach it. So they haven't come in from the point of view of like, right, let's spend weeks mapping out all these cool game mechanics, interactions, and all these kind of things you're going to be able to do as a player, all these verbs you're going to get to be able to play around with. They've come at it from the point of view of what's the story, what's the interactions that you would be doing as a detective in there, and also how to make it as close to what you would do in real life as possible. And so you get from that, if basically you've got, say, a phone that you're interacting with, and then on that phone are a bunch of apps and they work pretty much the same as your smartphone apps, you've basically collapsed all of the tutorial aspects of the game down to zero, right? It just works the way your smartphone works. You don't have to learn a new game and a new set of game mechanics and that kind of thing. And in particular, what we did for storytelling was, kind of, it's chat interactions, right? It's things coming and going through your kind of like, equivalent of a WhatsApp or a, messaging service or something like that. You're basically talking back and forward with your police team and making plans and making executions. So again, there's no like, right, here's how you control your team, and here's how you issue orders, and this is what the menu is like. None of that is there at all. So you just, even if you knew nothing about the game, you could probably just, bash your way through it and make some great progress, which, all good casual games achieve, right? That's kind of, I think, why it kind of connects and works really well. So yeah, I think that's, that's certainly the starting point. That's where it came from. And, from a core mechanic point of view, that's where we based everything out from. Then the challenge for us is now, as we start to look at new screens and new platforms, we do need to still engage with the platforms and the controls, right? So, for example, if you've got, if you're playing on one of the streaming platforms, typically you're playing with a phone in front of you and a TV screen behind you. So we've got to think through what's on which screen, what's playing which role, and that kind of thing. And if we're doing things on PC and that sort of thing, we need to think about how to kind of maybe make the game mechanics a little bit deeper without kind of breaking the accessibility. So we're trying to kind of experiment with things where maybe the player is kind of building up theories about the case and actually kind of visualizing those theories and then bringing those theories to the team. That's a little bit more kind of, that's more like 2 steps rather than a direct gut instinct interaction with your team. But that's because, we think a PC or a console audience can handle that level of kind of multi-step play. So you get the feeling it's kind of, without going too specific, we're sort of taking that core formula, we're keeping that alive, and we will always make games in that way. But then we're sort of adapting softly to each platform as it comes up.
And that's a perfect segue because I want to talk about the different platforms. I want to start with YouTube Playables. So as you mentioned, Urgent Cases is on YouTube Playables, which I think is a pretty fascinating product decision. Can you walk us through why YouTube Playables, like why now? And then also, do you have any learnings that you would like to share with any other game developers who might be considering YouTube Playables?
Yeah, so we'd made this decision that we wanted to kind of start to target sort of more premium experiences, and we wanted to do a kind of, we really interested to push into sort of streaming platforms at that point in time. And it was quite a bold strategy because there wasn't, at the time we're talking about, sort of early 2025, it's not like there was a plethora of streaming platforms all out there targeting casual teams, right? So it was a bit of a kind of long-term plan. This it was thinking ahead to where the market's going rather than responding to something. We got invited to be part of YouTube Playables kind of open beta that they did, and it felt like everything was lining up. Basically, there was this new platform that was delivering games over the air to players, and it was going to allow us to, be early movers, a bit like we were able to be an early mover with Netflix games and that sort of thing. We were kind of hopeful that, that would be an opportunity for us. And more than anything else, it really allowed us to kind of develop these new storytelling muscles, work out what that type of game was. So we took a formula. The Urgent Cases formula is like a distilled kind of police case, police drama that we've done, but kind of adapt that to a new, sort of streaming first platform. So we had to work out things like, if you're playing it on a phone, we kind of know that experience pretty well, right? You've got like a kind of interaction with your police team, and then you flip over to like a suspect or a victim's phone, and you're investigating sort of digital evidence on there, and then you come back to your police team. But if you put it on a desktop and you expand that out, what are you looking at? Are you just looking at like a phone in the middle of the screen? It's going to feel a little bit kind of a bit forced and a bit stretched. So we were able to make this kind of like police desktop that you can actually like pull out on your browser, full screen, and it's like you're basically playing through a police computer, and you've got like your chat running live, and you've got the forensics all on your desktop, and you can rummage through that, and you can bring that back to your team. And we had to build that. We had to build a really interesting kind of technology stack to allow our team to do that in a kind of realistic way. So the way that we build this stuff internally is very much closer to how you would build kind of web pages and websites. So we're fortunate to have some really talented game artists, and they've come from a web background. So for them, it's super natural to lay things out in that kind of adaptable web style where, a page is not a fixed size and resolution. It kind of stretches and grows and needs to have some limits, but not, too many, and that sort of thing. And that we coupled that with new tech that Unity made available, and it just flew. Like the UI team were able to just build screens for this game without having to kind of take every step through an engineer to see their stuff on the screen. And we basically built that kind of style of work out ever since. So YouTube Playables was like this brilliant kind of test for us in terms of how do we get our game built for that kind of interface and that style of play. And we learned loads and loads and loads by doing that. So we're really glad that we took that chance and built for it. For anyone else targeting that, I think there's obviously the web scalable, kind of interface stuff that I've just touched on is really difficult, especially if you want to do, things with a detailed user interface. That's really hard. The platform seems to be going very much in the kind of hyper casual direction as well. So you need to do all the things that hyper casual games do really, really well. So you need a hook that grabs people instantly and keeps them around. And then, you need to try and lightly, keep that core going. But it's a very, very difficult space to get into. And then the other side of it was sort of building basically for web-based technology. So it's kind of like built around WebGL, which is really has its own kind of like limitations on how you can build for that. So it needs to be kind of a certain size of download. There's certain rules about what you can and can't stream into the game. We had all kinds of fun with like when you start it on a phone on certain devices, like say like Apple restrict what kind of interactions you can have with web pages by default. So we can't just like play audio on the phone or have haptics running. You have to kind of get the player to actually interact before those things can come through. So all of those things were like rapid learnings. And, for anyone going into that space, it's worth kind of experimenting with what you're allowed to do on WebGL and kind of get to learn that first, because it's definitely got its quirks.
Sounds like it. Is there any platform that you're particularly focused on right now, or like, what's next from a platform perspective?
Yeah, so I mentioned we're pushing very much towards streaming platforms and premium sort of experiences. So it's a blend of, we're looking at kind of the streaming platforms that Amazon are pushing and Netflix pushing, and particularly like the game night representations on both. So something where there's no barrier to entry at all, and players can just come in and start enjoying these experiences. We are also developing for kind of PC and console type experiences and sort of premium mobile as well. It's not like an either or thing for us. These are, basically the connecting between all of these is widescreen versions of the types of experience we built before, but like really going for kind of very it's a premium story. So, recorded live action content. In the case of one of the things we're developing, we've got Hollywood talent and Ralph Ineson attached to the game. You can look at some teasers for that on our website and so on. So, we're pushing for those kind of experiences, tailoring for the needs of each platform. The streaming stuff really excites us, like I mentioned, because it's that same thesis of just being able to reach everybody that wants to play these kind of dramas, right? If you've got the ability to watch Amazon Prime or Netflix in your living room, you've probably got the ability to play these streaming games. If you've got a phone, you've already got the controller. So it's kind of, again, it's that really interesting space where it's starting to just open up a whole bunch of people that maybe wouldn't have traditionally wanted to play a video game, but, they maybe watch TV drama, and then they've got the option on their screen of like, if you scan a QR code, you can start playing this game, and they actually do fancy doing that in their living room, or maybe they're playing it together with their family, and the family are all piling in and telling you what choice to make on the screen and that sort of thing. So we're really excited about that space, but we wouldn't kind of completely cut off doing premium experiences on other screens as well.
All right, I want to shift gears to the topic of the day, which of course is AI. So I know that Scriptic was using AI in production since 2021, which is definitely earlier than most. Where is AI making the biggest difference in your day-to-day production of like a Scriptic title, and where has it just not lived up to the hype?
Yeah, so you're right. We were really early adopters, and we're really bullish on AI and AI usage. I think a lot of the dialogue is, as you kind of expect, it goes kind of like to extremes, right? It's either everything AI all in, or it's like no AI at all, don't touch it. And we're kind of in the middle of like, we use it everywhere for all kinds of things, but we use it as a tool, and it's a way of getting our stories told. It doesn't replace human craft, definitely. It's something where we have a clear view on what we want to do or tell, or what we want to create. We create these stories by hand. They're very much a crafted narrative that takes huge amounts of human effort to get to the standard that it's at. And then we augment that with various AI technologies to either build the thing, like in terms of like tooling and production and that sort of thing, or even create assets as well. So we make a mixture of things. So what we've done, and you can see examples of this in the work we've done, is quite often it's kind of composite things. Maybe we've had perhaps the most sort of spectacular example was on one of the videos we had on one of our shows on the free-to-play mobile platform, where we had a live action sequence and we composed together that with some effects that we built in-house with like traditional kind of After Effects stuff, and also an AI kind of video like to do a transition and turn around that scene. So it's like, it's not one thing, it's kind of like a mixture of all of those different techniques coming together and kind of making the vision that we want to make. And we'll use AI to create, maybe images on a suspect's phone and sort of fill out the space. We'll use things to maybe expand for recording options, what we can do in terms of maybe special effects or things happening in the background and that sort of thing. So we had an example last week where we're recording a kind of a TV show type scene, and basically using AI to expand the scene around what we've recorded. So full, production, physical, human recorded show, but then the outside of that is expanded using AI effects. And much like, traditional film and TV might use CGI, we're kind of using AI. Can be really useful for audio, but it's very trial and error. Like our team will take these tools, try to use them, see if the quality's there, and ultimately it comes down to, is the quality there for the storytelling, right? If it's going to be distracting, it's going to clearly not be of quality, then we still might be using human recording or something like that. So very much a blend for the creative of what we create. And then internally, from a tech point of view as well, we use AI really heavily for boosting our production. So we can go kind of in depth on that stuff if you like, but we're using, like, every member of our team uses some form of AI, whether it's kind of the engineers using it for kind of code assistance and code generation, but we use it for generating placeholders. We use it for kind of helping us with like laborious work where you've got to move 100 files from place A to point B and change the format. Like, those are the kind of things. But basically anything which is repetitive, grunt work, we try and get rid of that and use AI to help with that side of things. And then anything that requires quality control, human taste, craft, that's the stuff we want our team doing as much or as possible. So we try and kind of get them doing that as much as we can and remove all of the kind of boilerplate where we can with AI.
I think there's a real tension right now between game studios using AI, especially to scale content, and audience perception. As I mentioned, I have had a couple other interactive storytelling games guests on the platform, and depending on their audiences, there's been some real backlash against AI, or there's also just been fans engaging much less when they detect that AI is used. Like, are you seeing that when it comes to scriptic titles? Like, what has been the audience reception, or do they not really care because people are just more immersed in the story?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the quality side of things, right? What we're not doing is kind of like just, auto-generating a bunch of content and just, give me a crime story, press enter and see what. Like, we're still crafting the story. So, we've been using AI in everything we've made to some extent ever since the get-go. Like, it's, there'll be some images, some pieces of the story which are, there that have been AI generated. It's just, we're not doing it for the whole thing, and we're not doing it just for the sake of doing it. We're using it as a production aid. So I think that's the first thing, is that the quality comes first. And, the success speaks for itself. I mean, we haven't had a limited uptake on what we've done based on having AI content. I think we have to be careful within the games industry not to kind of get too insular with this. There's a very, very strong reaction, particularly from core gamers, and I understand why. Inside the core gaming kind of circles, there's a really, really strong negative reaction against AI, and I think a lot of kind of traditional PC and console developers are very, very tentative about even talking about having AI production aids, let alone any kind of like images that are player facing. But I don't think that reflects the general public's view on kind of AI and content. Like, if it's a good quality story and it's not an obvious thing that visually this thing was created with an AI production process as opposed to like a Photoshop, production process or something like that. I don't think for most players it matters. What will matter is if it's kind of clearly a poor quality video, or it's, an inhuman performance, or, there's a kind of uncanny valley in what's coming through. Like, and instantly players are going to be switched off by that. And that's the stuff that directly affects our storytelling craft and will have a negative impact on the quality of our game. So, basically the quality is the thing that drives out. We've got, brilliant writers and people directing our content that are, reviewing, editing, improving, and if it doesn't meet the bar, then we'll remove that content. We won't put that through to player facing. But I also want to stress that we've spent the last 2 weeks in recording studios, recording like 40 or so phone calls with human actors doing the performance in an ad-libbed way, where our directors are performing that with, like, it's a very human process at the core of it. And then we use AI around to build out the scene, to create images, to create extras in the video, and so on. We don't feel it needs to be this kind of either or debate. Basically, AI is an accelerant. It's something that we just build into our process and just use as a natural part of what we do. It's not a kind of AI maximalist thing where like everything needs to be auto generated by AI or nothing at all. Like, I don't think it would create a very good experience anyway.
Completely agree. So, as I mentioned, I think in the intro, A16Z has called Scriptic one of the studios shaping the next generation of interactive storytelling in the AI era. And as you know, this is a very crowded space, especially with all the entries in micro drama. What's the bet that you're making that other studios aren't?
Yeah, so I think I've just hinted at it. Really, is like we're not seeing it as a kind of either or thing. We're using AI to accelerate really, really great storytelling craft, right? So the storytelling craft is at the core and it will never be diluted down. So the quality of the story comes first, and then we have to kind of create really clever ways of building, like from a production perspective, and also kind of like how to develop that from a kind of a content creation point of view as well. And yeah, I think that's probably our secret formula. It's kind of like we're as a team, we're able to kind of punch miles above our weight. We can produce these huge, like complex, fully, kind of voiced, fully character, fully filmed scenes, and do it on fairly modest production budgets, and do this kind of, with a really, sort of amazing ability to build out a much bigger world that you're interacting with. I think that's our kind of the thing that we've done really well. I mean, we've just got a lot of experience with it now as well. We've been doing this for quite a few years now, of kind of how to fuse together a bit of AI, a bit of live action, a bit of traditional storytelling craft, a bit of kind of modern kind of games development and sort of free to play development and new platform development, and all in that kind of fusion is what makes Scriptic really special. And we've elected to kind of follow a sort of more like a film studio kind of model as well. So we're deliberately keeping the team lean, and a core team of people that the people inside Scriptic are like really unusual kind of T-shaped people. They don't have like a single thing that they do and nothing else. They're able to move between lots of different kind of areas of work and try new stuff out all the time. So we're constantly reinventing and evolving our workflows, trying new tools out, trying the latest video generation system, trying a new way of building data for the game. Like, we never sort of just sit on one thing and start to sort of factory produce it. And what we then do is kind of, we have this like really kind of core team that are really talented using this, amazing new tech as it comes through. And then we augment that with external teams or, production partners for filming, whatever. So we grow when we need to with those partners, and then we shrink back down to the core team when we don't need that level of production. So I think that kind of mixture of things is what makes us really unusual. And yeah, from an AI point of view, it's just we're not intimidated by it. We're using it as a accelerant for what we do really well, which is great storycraft at the core of it. It's really astonishing what our team's able to do. We've got people who are who've come in doing sort of narrative design and that sort of thing, building their own tools like in software, and creating new work processes and that sort of thing without engineers having to help them much with that. We've got people able to now end-to-end build the user interfaces that appear in the game without an engineer needing to piece that user interface together. Our creative team, we've built tools for them where they can really, really quickly kind of lay the call out that they're working on, or the narrative scene, and sort of play with it and change it really quickly and make another cut and then put that into the game without it going through some super long-winded build process. So it's enabling us to work at an incredible speed. And then, like I say, when we need to pulse bigger, we kind of work with external partners to do that, and then kind of keep the core team really specialized on what Scriptic does really well.
You guys have had a lot of success. As you mentioned, you're moving incredibly fast, especially for such a small team. What can you tell me that's on the roadmap for, let's say, the next 12 months that you can talk about? Any like new titles or new formats you can share with the Navic audience?
Yeah, so we're not quite ready to announce one of the deals that we've signed that we're working on, unfortunately, but it is for one of those streaming platforms, and we're building a streaming first game. We're sort of midway through production on that at the moment. That's the one I'm talking about, doing all the recording for and all of that hard work that the team are doing right now. We've also got, you can kind of get hints of another game that we've got in development, which is on our website, which is kind of more of like a PC and console kind of premium experience that we've developed up. And this general pattern is what will be Scriptic's kind of work for the coming sort of 12, 18 months now, is kind of building those types of experiences now, kind of one after the other. That's going to be our focus, and very much kind of IP based sort of development for the foreseeable future.
And so you've worked in the games industry for, I think, about 25 years now. We've talked about the companies and the games that you've worked with before. What's the piece of conventional wisdom about how a studio that should be built that you're most glad to leave behind?
Yeah, I think that so like kind of what I'd say not to do anymore, do you mean, in terms of leave behind?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, AI is changing a lot of things. Like I'm super excited about what is going to become possible. I understand it's a really controversial topic for some people, but for me, it's just a super exciting time. I mean, I look back to when games were built by quite small teams traditionally. Even in the inception, there were one or two people, and then it grew to teams of like 10 and then 30, and then suddenly it's hundreds and then thousands of people building games. And I don't think it's scaled very well against the hardware that's been available. As the hardware's got more complex, we've tried to build these high definition games, and basically, the game production is bogged down. People end up doing quite kind of unsatisfying slices of the game. You're building 100 wooden crates or 500 ammo clips or something like that. It's not kind of, you're not getting that kind of creative stamp that you used to be able to get in smaller teams. I think that's starting to reverse. I think that the potential there is that sort of AI-based workflows could really, really change that. And you start to get back to small teams, maybe not quite in the traditional shape that we're used to. Maybe the traditional roles will break down and erode a little bit. But if you set yourself up in a smart way, I think we could end up in a situation where pretty, relatively small teams are able to make fully crafted games, fully 3D games, large, expensive stories. I think that is going to be possible. It's not going to be just like I rock up to, Google Gemini or Claude Code and just go make me a 3D game and it just spits a game out. That's never going to happen. Like, it's going to take a lot of craft and planning and iteration and really careful building. But I think that is kind of upending a lot of the traditional knowledge, if you like, of how to build and run a studio. And I think it's going to create disruption and rifts. I think there's going to be studios that cling on to what they know for as long as they can, and it's going to be very hard for them to evolve. And then there's going to be incumbent studios that just go with it. They grab hold of the new wave and just go with that wave, and they really thrive and have a lot of fun doing it. I mean, for me, it's super fun getting your assumptions challenged and beaten. Like I actually really enjoy that. So we've had a few instances in the last couple of months where I would make an assumption about how to build maybe a tool or a pipeline for building content. We've tried it out with AI, and you know what? Actually, it does a great job. So stop fighting it. Stop trying to hammer it into the traditional way of building the thing. Like, build an AI skill that can do this and repeat that process over again. enable somebody to do that work that isn't an engineer, and free up the team to start working in that way. So I think that's the overall kind of pattern, I would say, in terms of how things are changing. Is like, I think from a studio leadership point of view, you've got to be okay with the fact that some of the old rules are getting broken down, and you're going to need to be able to challenge yourself, challenge your assumptions, maybe build a team that's not the traditional shape, maybe take a little bit of a risk on production in certain places, like try some things out and understand that they may not work all that well. So I think that's the overall theme for me in terms of things I'd kind of leave behind, is don't just kind of try and rinse and repeat the same old, production scaled up kind of model that you've used in the past, because it may not quite apply in the future facing kind of way of building games.
Is there a recent risk that you've taken that you'd be willing to share?
So I think I've touched on some of the kind of tooling and pipelines and that sort of thing, and also kind of how we've built up our tech internally. I mean, it's always risky changing something that kind of works, but maybe has its inefficiencies. So something that is changed differently. We've taken a pretty big punt on how to build our tech in a way that frees up our content makers and our artists to basically build stuff directly for the game. So that firstly, the risk is you're trusting them to take ownership of that and do a really high quality job, and not kind of put stuff in the game that breaks the game and that sort of thing. But also you're changing, how you build. You're placing emphasis on different areas of the team, and you're asking all of the team to adapt. You're asking the engineers to let go of stuff that they had full control over. You're asking the, content makers or the artists to not, just give something to an engineer and trust that it gets done from there. They have to own it all the way through into the game. So that's a risk, right? It could not work. You could end up in a situation where, okay, we're halfway into the game and we've created a big mess and we don't know how to finish this. But it's working brilliantly for us. And what I love is you get these kind of moments where the team are all working in parallel, like they're all able to move forward, they're all able to contribute. You haven't got that kind of waterfall thing where the kind of maybe the creative team have done their bit and they've handed it over, and now they're kind of twiddling their thumbs while people are sort of assembling that and putting it in the game. And then there's a kind of testing phase where everyone's kind of waiting for the QA process to finish. Everyone's on it. So we do things that are, I think, fairly not traditional in games, where we've embraced that kind of the old adage of kind of some of what Agile was built to do. So in terms of kind of we work to goals rather than kind of like very, very micro-grained tasks, for example. And the whole team are responsible for the quality of the game as well. So, we don't normally have QA in the team as a general pattern. We bring QA on at the right times for certain pieces of the project. But the whole team are responsible for testing the game, for finding bugs, for playing it together. No one has the excuse of like, I've done my bit of whatever, user interface, and I'll leave that to the QA team to test it, and they'll come back to me if there's a problem. Everyone plays the game. Everyone logs bugs. Everyone's involved in the triage of this thing. So what you get is a collective ownership of how is the game coming together? Are we on target? Are we happy with the standards of what we're putting out there? And you get a kind of shared understanding of what you're building. So that's risky as well. If you had a team which was, they didn't care, or they were disengaged, or they were just there to sort of go 9 to 5 and clock off at the end of the day, then that kind of level of engagement wouldn't work. But for us, that works, really, really well for kind of driving up the internal quality of what we do, and it keeps everyone kind of focused on what we're building. So yeah, we've taken a few, I think, what would be seen as risks in terms of production. Like for me, that's the fun part of game making, and that makes perfect sense to me. But I think sort of traditional production would say that's a bit of a risk. But I think it's working brilliantly for us at the minute.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I have 2 final questions for you. So if you were to imagine the playable narrative category 10 years from now, what do you hope it means for storytellers or players, or even people who are working inside the industry?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years is a very, very long time, but I mean, I would hope that a lot of what we're going after starts to become true, and it's just become really normal that there's a category of narrative dramas which are playable ones, and maybe even it starts to become a natural extension of the kind of the shows maybe that you're regularly consuming. So maybe it becomes normal to have kind of a high-end Netflix or Prime drama or something like that you watch on your TV, and then the normal thing to do at the end is to start sort of playing in that universe as well. And it's just like, it's not like a separate thing that you go and do. It's like the kind of interactive part of the show that happens after the main drama is concluded or something like that. So hopefully those boundaries just continue to collapse now. Hopefully that's the kind of thing, so that more people are playing this type of interactive narrative, and it's very kind of normal and widely accepted thing that loads of people do. That would be the ideal, really. And who knows what platform that will be on or what medium you'll be experiencing that through, but hopefully that's the kind of direction of travel for an interactive narrative.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining us on the Navic Gaming podcast. It was a pleasure to have you on, and we'll make sure to link to Scriptic in our show notes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really fun sort of talking about what we're up to. It's really nice to share.
If you enjoyed today's episode, whether on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, or give a 5-star review. And if you want to reach out or provide feedback, shoot us a note at podcast@navic.co or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Plus, if you want to learn more about what Navic has to offer, make sure to check out our website, www.navic.co. There, you can sign up for the #1 games industry newsletter, Navic Digest, or contact us to learn about our wide-ranging consulting and advisory services. Again, that is www.navic.co. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.